Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening up a file that I think a lot of us think we know, but once you start peeling back the layers, um, the reality is significantly more complicated than the headline.
It really is.
We're looking at the archetype of the young tech mogul.
Mm-hmm.
The drill, the hoodie, the dorm room, the sudden billions.
It's the defining myth of the 21st century, isn't it? The genius coder who disrupts an entire industry before they can even legally rent a car.
Right.
But the subject we're looking at today, Evan Spiegel, he actually complicates that narrative in some really interesting and, frankly, some really calculated ways.
Calculate is the perfect word.
Okay.
Because we aren't just talking about a guy who got lucky with an app. We're talking about Evan Spiegel, the co-founder and CEO of Snap Inc. And I just want to set the stakes right away.
Yeah, let's do that.
We're recording this in early 2026. As of late 2025, his net worth was sitting around $2.5 billion. But, looking at the numbers is almost the most boring part of this entire story.
I completely agree. The money is just the fuel. The engine is something else entirely. If you look at the sources we have, you've got the biographical data, corporate filings, the history of his board appointments. What emerges is a figure who is aggressively bridging very distinct worlds.
Very distinct.
You have the cutthroat engineering culture of Silicon Valley. Then you have the high-end visual obsession of the global art world. And then this really bizarre, fascinating pivot into French geopolitical aristocracy.
That is the part that I still can't quite wrap my head around, and we are going to get deep into that later. The French citizenship thing is, it's a journey.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. But our mission today is to try and answer this central tension that I think hangs over Spiegel's entire career. Is he the ultimate lucky brat, a product of immense privilege who just stumbled into a gold mine? Or is he a visionary genius who actually understood human psychology better than Mark Zuckerberg did?
It's the prince versus the architect debate. And to answer that, we really have to look at how he structured his power. Because as we're going to see, Spiegel didn't just build an app, he built a fortress around himself.
A fortress.
I like that. He holds voting power, that is.
Well, it's essentially dictatorial.
Okay, so let's stop guessing, and let's look at the data. We need to go back to the blueprint. Where does Evan Spiegel come from? Because unlike a lot of the rags to riches stories we love to tell in tech, this is very much a riches to more riches story.
It is. He was born June 4th, 1990, in Los Angeles. And the environment here, it is absolutely critical to understanding him.
Where in L.A.?
He grew up in Pacific Palisades. Now, for listeners who aren't familiar with L.A. geography, the Palisades is an incredibly affluent, incredibly insulated enclave. It's picturesque, it's safe, and it's very, very expensive.
And his parents weren't just comfortable. They were power players in their own right.
Oh, absolutely. John W. Spiegel and Melissa Ann Thomas, both of them were high-powered lawyers.
Both of them. His father, in particular, was a litigator involved in some massive cases. So Evan grows up in a house where argumentation, logic, and the nuances of the law are basically just dinner table conversation.
But there's a specific detail in the biography that I want to push on, because it feels a little bit like... Well, it feels like a PR narrative,
Well,
but I want your take on it.
go for it.
The sources say his father wanted to ensure the kids had perspective. So despite living in this bubble of wealth, we were required to do charity work.
Right. The forced perspective strategy. I've seen this before.
Exactly. So they were members of the All Saints Episcopal Church in Beverly Hills, and his dad would take him to hand out food at Head Start centers on Christmas. They went on these trips to Mexico to build houses.
Look, it's easy to be cynical about that. You can call it poverty tourism if you want to be harsh about it.
Which some people do.
And that's fair. But psychologically, just for a second, think about what that does to a child's brain. You are living in a mansion, but you are constantly being shown the baseline of how the rest of the world lives. On one hand, it creates a sense of noblesse oblige, this idea that privilege entails responsibility.
The duty of the wealthy.
The duty of the wealthy. But I think it also creates a sense of separation. You are always the helper, never the helped. You are the one with the agency. You are the one coming in to fix the problem.
That's a really interesting way to put it. It reinforces this idea that you are the one in control of resources from a very young age.
Yes. You're observing the problem from above, not living it from within.
Okay, so let's pivot to his education, because this is where I think the tech bro stereotype really starts to break down with him. When we think of Gates or Zuckerberg, we think of math Olympiads and nonstop coding marathons.
Yeah, the pure engineering mindset.
Right. But Spiegel went to the Crossroads School for Arts and Sciences.
which is legendary in Santa Monica. It's known for creativity, for performing arts. It's a completely different kind of incubator.
And the real differentiator, I think, happens in high school. He wasn't just taking AP Computer Science, he was taking design classes at the Otis College of Art and Design while still in high school.
And then, the summer before he even gets to college, he goes to the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena.
This is the crucial fork in the road, isn't it?
It is everything. Most tech founders in the 2010 era, they were engineers first. They prioritized function, speed, back-end architecture.
How fast does it run? How much data can it handle?
Exactly. Spiegel was studying design. He was studying form, user experience, visual hierarchy. He was learning a completely different language.
So you think that's why Snapchat looks so different? I mean, I remember when it came out, the UI was baffling to anyone over the age of 25.
It was baffling by design. That is the entire key. An engineer builds an interface that is logical. You have menus, lists, clear labels. A designer builds an interface that is experiential.
What's the difference?
Spiegel built Snapchat to open directly to the camera. There's no feed, no text box, just a camera lens looking out at the world. That is a pure design choice, not an engineering necessity.
It forces you to do something.
It forces the user to create, not just to consume. And that instinct, I guarantee you, comes directly from those classes at Otis and Art Center. It's about prioritizing the feeling of the product over the mere utility of it.
It's a paradigm shift. But before he launches the app, he has this really, I don't know, this erratic history of internships. I was looking at the list, and it felt like he was throwing darts at a career board.
It does look scattered, doesn't it? It's not a straight line at all.
Not at all. He does an unpaid internship at Red Bull in sales.
Which is fascinating when you think about it, because Red Bull isn't really a beverage company. It's a marketing company that just happens to sell caffeine to fund its stunts.
They sell a lifestyle.
They sell a lifestyle. So learning sales there means learning how to sell a vibe, high energy, extreme sports. You're not selling a can, you're selling an identity.
Okay, so that's one data point. Then he pivots to a biomedical company as a paid intern.
Total 180.
Then, and this is the weirdest one to me, he goes to Cape Town, South Africa to work as a careers instructor.
Right. From biotech to teaching in Cape Town.
And then finally he lands at Intuit on the TXT web project. So you've got marketing, biomed, education, and then finally software.
What stands out to me is that he's testing different operating systems for his life. He is gathering data. Do I like the adrenaline of sales? Do I like the precision of biomed? Do I like the altruism of teaching? It shows a very high level of curiosity. He wasn't just coding in a basement.
No, he was out in the world, observing different corporate cultures, seeing how different businesses worked from the inside.
And he's taking notes on all of it.
So he takes all this, the legal background, the obsession with design, the sales training, all these weird internships, and he heads to Stanford.
The incubator of Silicon Valley?
He majors in product design. Again, not computer science, product design. And he joins the Kappa Sigma fraternity.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, we're absolutely going to get to the fraternity culture later because, boy, does that come back to haunt him. But first, we have to talk about the aha moment. April 2011.
The context here is just so vital. In 2011, what was the dominant force on the internet?
Facebook.
More specifically, the Facebook timeline.
Right. The idea that everything you did was recorded forever. A permanent digital monument to yourself.
Exactly. The social graph. The whole goal of social media back then was to build a permanent archive of your life. Your graduation photos, your wedding, your baby pictures, all curated, all permanent, all searchable. That was the value proposition. Digital immortality.
And it was exhausting.
Yeah.
I remember feeling that pressure. You couldn't post a bad photo because it would be there when you applied for a job 5 years later. Every post was a performance.
That is the friction point Spiegel identified. So for his final project class, he proposes an app where the messages disappeared.
Ephemerality.
And the class hated it, right? I read that they just tore it apart.
They didn't get it at all. They said, why would anyone want that? That's only good for sexting. Which, to be fair, was the initial use case for a lot of people. It got that reputation early on.
It was a use case, sure, but Spiegel saw something so much deeper. He understood that if you remove the permanence, you remove the pressure. You bring human conversation back to the digital realm.
I've never thought of it that way.
In real life, when we talk, our words disappear into the air. We don't walk around with a transcript of every conversation we've ever had. Spiegel used design to mimic reality, whereas Facebook was trying to create a museum of your life.
That is such a crucial distinction. He was swimming completely upstream against the biggest company in the world. So he teams up with Bobby Murphy and Reggie Brown. They launch Picaboo.
Which later becomes Snapchat, of course.
And despite all the skepticism from his classmates and professors, it catches fire. By the end of 2012, they have 1 million daily active users.
And an incredible trajectory.
And this is where we hit the classic dropout trope. Spiegel leaves Stanford in 2012, just a few credits shy of graduation, to run the company full-time.
Standard operating procedure for a tech mogul. Gates did it. Zuckerberg did it. The university can't teach you how to run a billion-dollar rocket ship that's taking off while you're still building it.
But wait, he goes back.
He does, and this is such a telling detail about him.
In 2018, he is literally a billionaire. He is world famous. He is married to his supermodel. And he goes back to Stanford to sit in a classroom and finish his remaining credits.
Why do you think he did that? What's the motivation there?
I honestly don't know. Maybe it's an ego thing, like I can conquer the business world and the academic world. Or maybe it's just a promise he made to his parents, finishing what he started.
I think it points to a deep-seated desire for legitimacy. In the circles Spiegel runs in, and we'll talk about his connections to the high art world and French aristocracy, being a dropout isn't as cool as it is in a coding boot camp.
That's a great point.
A degree from Stanford is a credential. It's a stamp of approval from the establishment. And Spiegel, for all his disruption, clearly craves the approval of the establishment. He wants to be seen as more than just a lucky tech kid.
He wants a seat at the big table, not just the kids' table. And speaking of the big table, we have to talk about the refusal. The $3 billion no.
It's a moment that defined his entire early career. It's legendary in Silicon Valley lore.
So Facebook obviously sees Snapchat as an existential threat to its dominance with younger users. Zuckerberg comes knocking.
And he offers $3 billion in cash for an app that, at the time, made zero revenue.
Zero revenue. It's an insane number. And Spiegel says no.
It was viewed as the height of insanity. People in the Valley thought he was arrogant, delusional, or just plain stupid. The tech press savaged him for it.
But it goes back to his upbringing, doesn't it? He didn't need the money.
That's the whole ballgame. If you grow up struggling, $3 billion is a safety net that you cannot possibly refuse. It's generational wealth forever. But if you grow up in the Pacific Palisades with a safety net already firmly in place, you can afford to gamble on your own vision.
So privilege allowed him to take the very risk that made him a legend.
Absolutely. He bet on himself, and he won big time. Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in 2014, and then again in 2017. He proved all the doubters wrong.
But, winning the lottery is one thing. Keeping the money, and, more importantly, keeping control is another. And this brings us to how he actually runs this company.
Section 3, power, control, and corporate strategy.
We need to talk about the IPO, because usually when a company goes public, the founders sell a chunk of the company, and they ultimately have to answer to the shareholders. If the shareholders don't like what you're doing, they can vote you out.
That is how capitalism is supposed to work. The owners, the shareholders, control the company. But Spiegel completely broke that model. He shattered it.
How did he do it? How did he pull that off?
When Snap went public in March 2017, they did something incredibly audacious and controversial. They issued shares with no voting rights.
Wait, explain that. What does that even mean?
Okay, so usually you have one share, one vote. If I buy a share of Ford, I get a vote at the shareholder meeting. I have a tiny say in who sits on the board. Snap created what's called a multi-class share structure.
Okay.
So Class A shares, the ones they sold to you and me, the public, got 0 votes. Class B shares, held by early employees and investors, got 1 vote per share. And then there were Class C shares.
And who held those?
Only Spiegel and his co-founder Bobby Murphy. And those Class C shares got 10 votes per share.
10. So the public literally has 0 say in how the company is run.
0. Nothing. It means that Spiegel and Murphy, despite owning only about 45% of the total stock at the time, controlled over 70% of the voting power. They are kings. The investors are just serfs providing capital for the kingdom.
Why on earth would anyone buy that stock? It sounds like a terrible deal.
Because the growth was incredible, and investors had such massive FOMO fear of missing out on the next Facebook. They were willing to trade their voice for a chance at huge profits.
So they took the deal.
They took the deal. But the implication is massive. It means Evan Spiegel is unfireable. He can make bad decisions for 10 years straight, lose billions of dollars, and nobody can stop him.
It effectively makes Snap a private kingdom that just happens to trade on the New York Stock Exchange.
Precisely. And that structure is what allows him to make these huge, risky pivots that a normal CEO couldn't survive. Look at the camera company rebranding.
Right, I remember that. They suddenly stopped calling themselves a social media app and started saying Snap is a camera company.
Which confused Wall Street. It confused everyone. But then they launched spectacles, the sunglasses with the little cameras in them.
I remember those. There were those yellow vending machines, the Snap bots that would just drop from the sky in random locations. The hype was unreal.
The marketing was pure genius. The product flopped hard.
Yeah, nobody really bought them.
They had to write down millions and millions of dollars in unsold inventory. In a normal company, the CEO would be hauled in front of the board and absolutely grilled. Why did you waste all this money on sunglasses?
But Spiegel didn't have to answer to anyone.
He could just say, it's part of our long-term vision. We're building the future of augmented reality. Deal with it. And there's nothing anyone could do.
And he's sticking to it. They're still making AR glasses, still pouring money into this vision.
Because he believes the future of computing isn't a phone in your hand, it's a digital overlay on your eyes. And because of his voting control, he has the runway to be wrong for a decade in the hopes of being right, eventually.
He's also diversifying his own personal power base outside of Snap. I noticed he joined the board of KKR in 2021.
Which is a huge deal. KKR is one of the biggest, most aggressive private equity firms on the planet. This is serious, hard-nosed, old-school finance. It's not tech money. It's Wall Street money.
And then whiplash, the very next year, in 2022, he joins the board of the Gagosian Gallery.
Which is the absolute pinnacle of the commercial art world. Larry Gagosian is arguably the most powerful art dealer alive.
So look at the map he's drawing here. He controls a massive tech platform with an iron fist. He sits on the board of a global finance giant. He sits on the board of the most elite art gallery in the world. He's triangulating his influence.
He's designing his career the same way he designed the app. It's not accidental. He is deliberately positioning himself at the intersection of culture, capital, and code. It's a very sophisticated game of three-dimensional chess.
But the whole game almost ended before it really began. We have to talk about the controversy, because for all this talk of sophistication and art boards, there was a time when Evan Spiegel looked like the absolute worst cliché of a toxic, privileged frat boy.
The 2014 leak. This is the skeleton in the closet. The big one.
So in 2014, the website Gawker gets a hold of a bunch of emails Spiegel wrote during his time at the Kappa Sigma fraternity at Stanford. And I've read through the transcripts of these emails.
Yeah.
They're rough.
Rough is a very polite way to put it. They were profoundly misogynistic, homophobic, and just aggressive.
I'm going to quote a few phrases here because we can't sanitize this if we want to understand the pivot he makes later. He talked about trying to get laid by wasted Soros loots. He joked about shooting lasers at fat girls. He encouraged underage drinking.
It was vile. It was the unfiltered id of a privileged, immature young man who viewed women as objects and his fraternity brothers as the absolute masters of the universe.
When this leaked, the backlash was instantaneous and severe. People were horrified. This was the guy running a company that was already being valued in the billions.
It confirmed every single negative bias people had about Silicon Valley. That it was a boys' club, that it was hostile to women, that the founders were just entitled man-children who had been given way too much money and power.
How did he survive it? A lot of people would have been fired for that.
Well, he couldn't be fired, remember?
Ah, right. The voting control.
But he did apologize. He issued a statement saying he was mortified and embarrassed. He called himself a jerk. But the key line in that apology was this. He said, the emails in no way reflect who I am today or my views towards women.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. That sounds like classic crisis PR 101.
Yeah.
Sorry I got caught. That's not who I am anymore. Let's all move on. Do we actually believe him?
That is the million-dollar, or I guess in his case, the billion-dollar question. Was it a sincere moral awakening? Or was it a really smart cleanup job to protect the company's image and its eventual IPO valuation?
Because the timing is suspicious.
The timing is very suspicious. If you look at the timeline, the apology came right when the business was getting very, very serious. So a cynic would say it was purely transactional.
You sense a bud coming.
But if we look at his actions in the decades since that happened, the behavior did stop. He didn't have repeat scandals. He didn't turn into a CEO who is constantly saying controversial things on Twitter or getting into public fights. He went quiet. He disciplined himself. And he began a very, very deliberate process of rebranding.
Which leads us directly into his personal life. Because nothing says, I am a matured, responsible adult, like marrying a world-famous supermodel and moving into a historic estate.
The Miranda Kerr era, a masterclass in image rehabilitation.
They start dating in 2015, right after the scandal has had some time to settle down.
A year after the leak. The timing is, as you said, impeccable.
She's a global supermodel, she's a businesswoman in her own right with her own brand, and she was formerly married to the actor Orlando Bloom. This is A-list celebrity status.
It's a merger. It's a brand merger. You take the tech genius brand, which is now tainted with this frat boy image, and you marry it to the fashion icon and wholesome mother brand.
It softens his image immediately.
Instantly. You can't be seen as a dirty frat boy if you're walking the red carpet at the Met Gala with Miranda Kerr. It legitimizes him in circles that don't care about code or user engagement metrics.
So they get engaged in 2016, married in 2017 in a very private ceremony at their home. They have 3 sons together, plus he's a stepfather to her son with Orlando Bloom.
A complete family man image.
And they buy this house in Brentwood, $12 million, over 7,000 square feet. And the source notes it was formerly owned by Harrison Ford.
Which, again, signals taste. He didn't buy a modern glass box in the Hollywood Hills with a giant infinity pool. He bought a pedigree estate with history. Again, it's that constant, nagging desire for established status, not new money, but old money taste.
But then there's the plot twist that I mentioned at the top of the show, which just seems to come out of left field. The French citizenship.
Ah, yes, Monsieur Spiegel.
Walk me through this because it's wild. He is American, born in L.A., works in L.A., his company is based in L.A., but in 2018, he and his son Hart are granted French citizenship.
And he didn't live there. He didn't do the time.
Right. Usually we have to live in France for at least 5 years to even apply for citizenship. It is not an easy process.
Spiegel used a very obscure, rarely used clause in the French Foreign Ministry's rulebook.
What does it say?
It allows citizenship to be granted to foreigners who, and this is a quote, contribute to the influence of France and the prosperity of its international economic relations.
So basically, it's the you are rich and famous and we like you, so come on in clause.
Essentially, it's the meritorious contribution loophole, a golden ticket.
But why? Why does he want it? Is it just so he can stand in the shorter EU line at the Charles de Gaulle airport? There has to be more to it than that.
Oh, I think it is much, much more strategic than that. We need to look at this through a geopolitical lens. This is the Davos man concept. The ultra-elite don't want to be tethered to a single nation state anymore.
Explain what that means.
If you are purely an American CEO, you are subject to the whims of American politics, American tax law, and American regulators. But France is the gateway to the entire European Union, and the EU is the most aggressive regulator of big tech in the world.
They're the ones passing the GDPR, the Digital Markets Act.
They're the ones fining Google and Apple billions and billions of dollars. They are the global sheriff when it comes to tech regulation.
So by becoming a French citizen,
he embeds himself inside the fortress. He isn't just another American invader anymore. He is a French contributor. It gives him this layer of diplomatic cover. It differentiates Snap from Facebook or Google. He can go to regulators in Brussels and say, look, I'm one of you. I appreciate European culture. I'm not just here to extract value.
That is incredibly cynical and absolutely brilliant at the same time.
It is geopolitical hedging, pure and simple. Plus, let's be honest, it feeds the ego. The sources say he's a Francophile. He learned the language. He loves the aesthetic. It fits the artist CEO persona he has so carefully built.
So we have the power, the scandal, the rebrand, the passport. Now let's talk about the money. What is he actually doing with it? We mentioned the forced perspective charity of his youth.
Yeah.
How is that translated to his adult philanthropy?
He and Bobby Murphy founded the Snap Foundation, and they made a pretty significant pledge to donate upwards of 13 million shares of their Class A stock over a period of 15 to 20 years.
And the mission statement is very specific and I think very interesting. Develop pathways to the creative economy for underrepresented youths in Los Angeles.
That phrase, creative economy, is doing a lot of work there, isn't it?
What does it actually mean, though, in practice?
It means he is trying to replicate his own path for others, but for people who don't have his advantages. Think about it. How did Spiegel get rich? By being creative, by designing something new. But he could only do that because he had the resources and the privilege to go to Otis and Art Center.
Right.
If you are a kid in South LA or East LA, you might have the same raw talent, but you don't have the pathway. You're worried about rent, not about learning typography.
So he is trying to democratize the privilege that he had.
Exactly. It's a recognition that for many people, creativity is currently a luxury good. He wants to make it accessible. It's a very targeted, very personal form of philanthropy.
We saw this with the Stockton Scholars donation, a $20 million gift to that scholarship program. We saw it during COVID with $3 million in direct aid to those affected. But the moment that really went viral, the one everyone remembers, was the Otis moment in 2022.
This was a mic drop moment for philanthropy. Just an absolute stunner.
So he goes back to Otis College, the very place where he took those high school design classes that shaped him. He's invited to be the commencement speaker. And at the end of his speech, he and Miranda Kerr announced they are paying off the student debt for the entire graduating class of 2022.
Can you imagine that feeling? You're sitting there, you're graduating from art school, which is notoriously expensive. You're probably facing $50,000, $100,000 in debt. And in one single sentence, it is gone.
It's life-changing. It's freedom.
It is, and it's also deeply symbolic. He is closing the loop. He is saying, this institution gave me the skills that allowed me to become a billionaire. Now I am using those billions to liberate you from the financial burden of that same institution.
It's flashy, though. You have to admit, it's the kind of charity that makes headlines. A quieter donation of the same amount wouldn't have had the same impact.
It is, but is that necessarily a bad thing? It draws massive public attention to the crisis of student debt, particularly in the arts. It validates the pursuit of a creative career. And it aligns perfectly with his carefully constructed brand, the patron saint of the young creative.
So when we pull all these threads together, the lawyer's son, the design student, the toxic frat boy, the ruthless CEO with the dictator-style voting rights, the global citizen with the French passport, the targeted philanthropist. Who is Evan Spiegel? What's the final analysis?
He's a paradox. But I think he is a paradox that is constantly learning and constantly evolving.
That's the feeling I get. He's not static. He's constantly rewriting his own code, so to speak.
And remember, the single most important fact, he is still only in his mid-30s.
That is the scary part. That's the part that's hard to comprehend.
Jeff Bezos didn't really hit his stride with Amazon until he was in his 40s. Steve Jobs had his wilderness years. Spiegel has already lived 3 lifetimes of corporate drama. And he's just getting started. And because of that voting structure we discussed, he isn't going anywhere.
He has absolute control. He has a massive war chest of personal wealth.
Yeah.
He has global status and connections in tech, art, and finance.
So here's the question that I think we have to end on. What is he building?
Is it just better AR glasses? A cooler version of Snapchat?
I don't think so. I think Snap is just the engine. It's the cash machine. The real project, the ultimate design project, is his own influence. He has secured his legacy in tech. He is cemented in the art world. He's a player in global finance. He's a European citizen.
It sounds like he's designing the ultimate life for himself.
Or perhaps he is positioning himself for something bigger than tech entirely. When you have that much control, that much capital, and that much time ahead of you, maybe the app isn't the end game. Maybe the app was just the training wheels for a much larger ambition.
That is a very provocative thought to leave our listeners with. When a product design student becomes a billionaire with French citizenship and a seat at the table of global art and finance, what is the ultimate design project he's working on? Is it the app, or is it shaping his own influence on global culture?
With 70% voting power and a lifetime ahead of him, I certainly wouldn't bet against him.
We will be watching. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.